Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm actually taking you along on one of my typical photographing days, or as I also like to call them, a shoot day. On this particular day I had a photo shoot planned for a brand, and yeah, I'm just taking you along from the morning until the evening, from beginning to end, and if this is something that you want to see, then just keep watching. Obviously, every day is a little bit different in my job, and this particular day here is, just what I did on this particular day. Just to make you aware up front, like no 2 days are actually ever the same. But yeah, usually in the morning I start by making a cup of tea, and also on this occasion I had to tidy up from the day before. Sometimes I finish really late in the evening, and yeah, I don't tidy up everything sometimes. So in the morning sometimes I just start by putting everything back into place as well. Then on this day I had a grocery delivery actually arriving with some ingredients for the photo shoot. I had booked that for the morning of the photo shoot so that I would have everything in time to create the recipes with. And yeah, there was quite a lot. I usually order some groceries about every 2 weeks, and then it covers usually multiple photo shoots that I'm doing, plus our private shopping. So yeah, kind of a little bit too empty here. After taking everything inside, I'm just putting everything away into all of the kitchen cupboards or wherever it belongs. Due to the nature of my job, I usually have a lot of products at home, in my fridge, in my cupboards. So this can usually take quite a little bit of organizing just to find a space for everything, but usually I succeed. The grocery delivery actually kind of interrupted my cleaning process, so I'm just finishing that off over here before getting into the rest of my work. And then I'm finally enjoying my breakfast tea. I've recently switched back to green tea again. During the summer and early autumn, I actually had a phase where I drank coffee every day until I started getting migraines from that. So I kind of switched back to green tea, which is a little better on my headaches for me. I had a smoothie on this morning as well. I had these little kind of pre-portioned smoothies in the freezer, and this is a chocolate one that I'm having here. Always quick and easy. I don't usually spend that much time on making my breakfast these days, but I go through phases, so it changes every now and then. It's usually a smoothie or some porridge at the moment. Once I've got my breakfast all sorted, I'm sitting down and I usually look through some of my emails and my to-do list for the day whilst I'm having my breakfast. This is what I'm doing here. I'm also making some recipe notes for some recipes that I had already developed beforehand, and then I'm just photographing on this day. So depending on what I do and who I work for, if I have multiple days for a couple of recipes, I usually spend one day just cooking and preparing everything, and then another day photographing. But it depends on the project, so it can be very different. After some laptop work and some preparations for the shoot day, I'm starting to set up. This is my little home studio. I usually shoot on this table, and I have a couple of different backdrops that I use. I've got my light here, my tripods, my reflectors, yeah, a couple of different things that I use here. Last year I did film a home studio tour about my setup, however that was still in our old apartment, and now since we've moved, obviously things have changed quite a little bit. Yeah, if you're interested in seeing an updated studio tour, then just leave a comment below and I'm sure we can get that done. On this particular day, I actually started with filming a video. In this case, it was a reel for a brand's Instagram. I often use this little electric hop for when I'm filming on this backdrop, and I'm just setting up my camera settings. Just checking, like, you know, how high my camera needs to be to get everything into the shot, sharpening everything, and yeah, so that's what I check out first, and then I'm starting to film the recipe. For this particular recipe, something had to go into the freezer for an hour. So whilst that was in the freezer, I was just going back on my laptop, doing some more work, and something I also like to do when I'm working in the kitchen is actually put a movie on in the background. This was still filmed before Christmas, so I was in a Christmas movie mode. So on this day, I was actually making some stuffed donuts for this brand. So I'm starting to make my donut dough over here. If you want to make some donuts, I actually got this recipe up on my blog. I can leave this in the description down below if I remember. If not, please send me a reminder in the comments and I will add that on. This recipe for donuts actually uses a yeast dough, so you can see my really bubbly yeast. It was definitely active, as I could tell. One thing I wasn't aware of when making these donuts is that it was actually very time intense to make these. I didn't expect this to take so long, but because everything has to, you know, rest, the dough has to rest, and you have to fry everything in batches and then, you know, cut everything out. It just took forever. Whilst the dough was resting, I actually started on the next recipe, and it was a lasagna on this occasion. So in the meantime, the first recipe that I started filming is still in the freezer because it had to go in there for at least an hour. But yeah, whilst that it was still in there, and it's fine if it's there longer. I was just working on the next couple of recipes just to not waste any time, do a little bit of washing up in between. This is what I have to do multiple times a day just to maintain the space, because I need a lot of space when I work, and also lots of the stuff that I use I need to wash up and use multiple times during the day. Whilst my lasagna ingredients were just cooking away, I was actually looking after my donuts again. You can see how much the dough has risen over here. It got quite sticky, and I'm actually starting to shape my donuts here. So what I'm doing is I'm creating some little round dough balls that I'm going to fill later on. And then with part of the dough, I actually also rolled it out and used some cookie cutters to get it into some interesting shapes, such as, well, the typical round one, of course. And then I also created a couple of donut Christmas trees and donut stars. And it's actually super simple to make this. All you need is just some cookie cutter. During this day, I also had another last-minute delivery coming in. This was actually from the brand that I was shooting for, and there were a couple of things in there that I actually needed on this day. So yeah, it was good timing that it still arrived before I started photographing. Back in the kitchen, I'm preparing the lasagna, and as you can tell, my job is a lot of multitasking. And by multitasking, I mean switching between different tasks all of the time. To kind of work efficiently, you have to, yeah, just once one thing is, you know, in the fridge, in the freezer, or just sitting there improving, you just kind of have to make use and do some other bits in the meantime. So this is what I do all day. I switch between like the different recipes and different tasks. Once the lasagna went into the oven, I was back on my donuts, and I'm frying all of those on the stovetop here. And this is like in small little batches. That's why this kind of took forever to do, but yeah, every single donut actually cooks really quickly, and you have to stay nearby just to make sure nothing gets burned, and you have to turn it as well just so that it evenly browns. So yeah, it requires a lot of attention. By this time I was actually quite hungry as well, so here I'm making myself a little grilled cheese sandwich with avocado on top. One of the things that happens a lot when you work from home as a food photographer is that you are surrounded by food all of the time, but you can't eat anything up until the shoot is done, so you end up having to make like some really simple and quick things in the middle as well. By this time, all the donuts were done and cooled down, so the donuts I was making on this day were actually just some simple cinnamon sugar donuts. So here I'm just tossing them in the cinnamon sugar and getting everything ready to photograph. And how cute is this little star? I set all the donuts aside and then went back to filming my recipe video. So yeah, I'm setting up again. I've got this little white table on the side as well, and I often just keep all of my props or things that I might need during the shoot on that table. It's got some little wheels at the bottom, which is super handy, so I can move it around. yes, this is actually what it looks like when I'm filming a recipe video behind the scenes. It's not as spectacular as the actual recipe video looks like in the end. For some shots in this particular recipe, I actually used 2 cameras, so I was also using my vlog camera with a different lens on there, so here you get to see a little bit of what it looked like whilst I was filming. Setting up some fairy lights here in the background, just to add some texture and depth, and also this went live before Christmas, so it just worked perfectly. These are little fondant puddings, by the way, just so you have an idea of what I was filming here. So now I've got the big reveal in a second. This was actually still very hot by the time I touched it, but I did want to get it like nice and steaming on the shots, so yeah, you have to make sacrifices sometimes. For video shoots such as this one, where there are steps included that kind of ruin or break whatever I'm filming, I usually have multiple and then film multiple attempts just so that I can pick out the best version for the final video in the end. So here you can see me just going into all of those puddings multiple times just to get a good shot, a good squidgy fondant pudding shot. And yes, by this point I actually also get to enjoy something that I've cooked on that day. So all of these little bites I'm taking here actually ended up in my mouth and it was really delicious. Once the video was done, I went over and photographed the donuts. So here I'm just setting up for that. I sometimes have an idea of how I want to set up a photo or have like multiple different ideas, and then I just take it from there, because usually once I work with the food or work with a dish, I'll have some other ideas and I'll try out different things, and sometimes the final images end up completely different from what I was originally planning, but that's the kind of process I kind of love about it. Between the different shoots, there's always a little bit of a tidy up needed, and my Hoover is in constant use over here because I work with a lot of sprinkles and little dust and everything around the food when I photograph it. And then I'm preparing the lasagna to be photographed. So what I'm doing here is I kind of thought it looked a little bit dry on the top, so I added a little bit more of vegan cheese and popped it back in the oven for a few minutes just to have that nice melty effect on the top. Whilst the lasagna is baking in the oven, I am doing a little bit of a cleanup in the kitchen, all of the kitchen counters. And then afterwards I'm photographing the lasagna over here. I'm just adding some fresh herbs on the top. And yeah, just adding a little bit of surrounding decorations for this shot. And yeah, the lasagna is the last shot for this day. So I'm just doing a little bit of a tidy up afterwards and enjoyed some lasagna actually as well on this particular day. But yeah, this is what most of my shoot days look like, and then the next day I do it all over again. I really hope you enjoyed this kind of video, getting a little bit of a behind the scenes look in a typical work day, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one.